Hey, sorry for that little glitch there. Now it should be working. And we're broadcasting on X, Facebook, and YouTube live, and this will be archived afterwards. My next album, to be titled In Our Dreams, will be up on Bandcamp by the end of this month and will be up on Spotify and all the other streaming platforms by the end of July, if all goes as planned. While the album isn't quite done yet, it's mostly done. I'm very excited about it, and I thought I'd give anyone interested a little tour of the album, share some tracks with you, and talk about what was going on when I wrote each of the songs. The songs I'll share with you were all written and recorded in May or June 2025 and document a little of what happened during those months, mainly in Gaza and the U.S. But first I want to introduce the musicians involved with this album, which make the album particularly special. All the instruments you hear that aren't vocals or my guitar are being played, or in some cases programmed, by Chet Gardner. I first met Chet sometime in the 90s when he lived in California, and I was on tour as part of Chris Chandler's backup band. I became reacquainted with Chet in 2020 during the course of the pandemic lockdown open mics that I was hosting online weekly for several months. The pandemic lockdowns were good for some things. Many of us became pretty good at home recording and broadcasting, me among them. Chet was one of the ones who already had these and many other skills, both musical and technical. When Israel's full-scale genocide began in Gaza, Chet offered to lay down other instrumentation on top of the songs I was recording in my living room. Like so many other people I know around the world, Chet was overwhelmed with horror at the crimes Israel was committing in Gaza and wanted to do something, at least, to let people know what was happening. I was writing songs that he knew he could improve upon, and at least potentially broaden the appeal. This will be the 7th album Chet and I have put out together since Notes from a Holocaust first went up on Spotify in January 2024. We've now recorded over 120 songs together since October 2023. This album is different from the others we've done together in this remote way, sending files across the ocean, because most of the songs in Our Dreams feature the vocal harmonies of the brilliant Laura Love. Laura is a musician from the Seattle area who I've been a fan of since I first lived in Seattle in the 1980s. Somewhere along the line, she started following what I was putting out vis-a-vis songs and essays. As with Chet, she offered to take songs I recorded in my living room and add vocals to them. As with Chet, she was horrified by events in Gaza and wanted to contribute to the effort to communicate to the public about it. I suppose there's no solid evidence that a song can change the world, but there's lots of evidence that social movements need music in order to exist. Every time I write one of these songs, I am trying to write the song that will awaken the sleeping good Americans and cause them to act and shut down the war machine. I know that every time Chet and Laura make their contributions to each of the songs, they're hoping these will be the musical arrangements that will break through and spark action somehow. Since we began putting out albums together fairly rapid-fire, one every few months since the genocide began, monthly listeners on Spotify have more than doubled. Somehow their meager payouts have not doubled, but they have increased by 20%, which is gratifying, but mostly not in the financial sense. The reality is, after covering rent and groceries, I wouldn't even be able to pay for studio time to make solo acoustic recordings, let alone pay consummate professionals like Chet or Laura for their time. For every hour I've put into writing and recording each of these songs, Chet and Laura have each put in several. The result, I hope you'll agree, is a great album. Maybe even a persuasive one, if it were to reach the right ears. The photo that makes up the cover of the album was taken by veteran photojournalist and at this point old friend Guy Smallman. It's a photo of one of innumerable massive marches for Palestine that have been happening weekly in London, England, since October 2023. May 2nd marked 2 full months since any food, water, medicine, or anything else had been allowed by the Israelis to enter the Gaza Strip. People dying of starvation was becoming widespread and getting much worse by the day, as it continues to do. A particular photo of a girl with protruding ribs looking longingly at a photo of herself when she was a healthy, smiling, well-fed little girl went viral. Looking at that photo, I wrote this song, This Is What Genocide Looks Like. This is what genocide looks like, such a familiar sight to anyone who's seen the photos when they came in and let in the light. That shone in the contest of faces, that showed us the bones and the skin. Look upon that little girl and multiply it by 1,000,000. This is what genocide looks like, but the difference, unlike before, it's being live streamed in front of us right there by the sea shore, where no boats dare to sail, where no planes dare to land, where not a car or truck can enter at the Israeli state's command. This is what genocide looks like. It looks like it looked in Dachau, with everyone starving and dying and still haunting the world till now. The third month of a total embargo, with all the trucks lined up outside, with Netanyahu keeping them there until all the children have died. This is what genocide looks like, what it's like when the world stands by, when every state decides that they just have to watch them die. They say Israel is too powerful, backed up by the USA. It's a suicide mission to intervene, so that the UN will say. This is what genocide looks like, just like it looked way back when we knew the Nazis were starving all the folks in the camps back then. Someday we can be sure we'll recall this Holocaust too, in a museum to remember the people of Gaza killed off by an army of Jews. I'm doing this presentation live, so if you're one of the folks watching live on YouTube, X, or Facebook, I can see your comments, so feel free to leave one. When it's done, it'll also go out as a podcast, which you can find if you look for This Week with David Rovics, wherever you get your podcasts. A few people have expressed discomfort with my reference at the end of that last song to an army of Jews, particularly for any of those folks who may be listening. Let me just say that as someone who grew up raised on stories about the horrors of the Nazis in a community near New York City, as someone with lots of Jewish friends and relatives, including my dad, grandparents, nanny, etc., there was always this idea, also commonly expressed in Israeli circles, that because of all the experiences of oppression, Jews or a Jewish army could never behave the way the Nazis or the pogromists behaved. The fact that this assumption was wrong is devastating to many people. My reference to an army of Jews is also simply descriptive. My father, my sister, or I can get Israeli citizenship anytime we want, by virtue of being born Jewish enough for Hitler's gas chambers, which is very intentionally the official Israeli definition of Jewishness. You pretty much have to be Jewish to serve in the Israeli military. Israeli citizens who are Palestinian, or what some in Israel refer to as Israeli Arabs, are not allowed in the IDF. All Jews in the world, certainly, are not in or supportive of the Israeli government, but the Israeli army is an army of Jews. A few days after writing that song, as I and everyone else in the world who knows how to go to Al Jazeera's website and click play, watched the famine in Gaza worsen, saw the images of children with rib cages protruding, and heard the latest UN press conferences calling on the world to act to stop this man-made, Israeli-made famine, I wrote as we watched 1 million children die.
From a walled-off ghetto, a rebellion began. And then the war that's been waged against every child, woman, and man within the Gaza ghetto, where half of the people are kids. Israel targeted everyone, that's exactly what they did. After 18 months of total war with most everything gone, despite such unequal odds, the resistance went on. So the regime decided the only way to win was to starve to death all the people within. In the future, we'll look back and ask how we all stood by as we watched 1 million children die. Netanyahu declared, making it clear as day, to win against Hamas, this is the only way to starve the population. Our retribution will be famine and disease, the final solution. In the future we'll look back and ask, how could we stand by as we watched 1 million children die? Sometime later they'll surmise, as they consider the assassins, that a Jewish state could do this. They'll say no one could have imagined. They'll pretend we didn't know, or no one could turn the tide once the Israelis are finished committing genocide. In the future we'll look back and ask how we all stood by as we watched 1 million children die. As we watched 1 million children die.
On May 15th, as Israel was celebrating what they call their Independence Day, what Palestinians and much of the rest of the world know of as the Nakba, the catastrophe, I wrote, "Where were you when the Jewish state committed genocide?" Thinking about how everyone later remembers certain events that they largely ignored when the events were actually happening, one of those events being the Nazi Holocaust. The genocide of the people of Gaza will soon be another one of those events.
Where were you when the walled ghetto rose? Where were you when the bombing began? When the Israeli state started the slaughter of every child, woman and man? Where were you when they imposed the embargo? When Gaza starved and died? when the body parts littered the ground, when the Jewish state committed genocide. Where were you when this Holocaust happened? Where were you at the beginning of May? Did you commemorate 1945 on Victory Day? Where were you when they bombed the last hospital with all the children inside, which Israel called another terrorist base when the Jewish state committed genocide? Where were you when they tortured the doctors, when the snipers shot all the kids? Were you watching the proceedings in Rome? And instead of the things that he did you hope he might fly off to Egypt to fast till they let him inside? Did you hope someone might do something when the Jewish state committed genocide? Where were you when it became clear that the leadership meant what they said, just like Adolf meant what he wrote, that these people would soon all be dead? Where were you when he went on TV? What else could we have tried when he said we should Holocaust them and the Jewish state committed genocide? Where were you when you saw the rib cages, when you realized this really was it, that they actually intended to kill them all, which the pundits would never admit? Now that there's a before and after, now that never again is a lie, now that this crime has been repeated since the Jewish state committed genocide, where were you?
On May 21st in Washington, D.C., 2 Israeli diplomats were killed by a young man from Chicago named Elias Rodriguez. When this happened, I was not immediately drawn to write a song to commemorate this bloody event. I'm not much of a fan of assassination as a political tactic generally. What drove me to write a song about it was all the horrible media coverage that followed the event. Suddenly, the scores of children being bombed and starved every day in Gaza had one more reason to be relegated to the back pages, and the story now was all about the skyrocketing scourge of anti-Semitism in the U.S. and throughout the Western world. This is just blatantly dishonest journalism, or in some cases, journalists quoting blatantly dishonest politicians. The obvious reality is of a guy motivated by desperation and horror at the genocide he, like so many of us, have been watching live streamed in front of our disbelieving eyes, while we also have watched the agonizing daily failure of the rest of the world to effectively act. From Elias's vantage point, again obviously, he was, in the Gallianist tradition some might say, killing representatives of a genocidal regime. Whether they were Jewish or not, for Elias and for the overwhelming majority of people around the world who are horrified by genocide, was completely irrelevant.
They'll dismiss it as a hate crime, and there's a whole lot to despise. They'll say it was anti-Semitic, no matter what the evidence belies. They'll say it isn't safe for Jewish people unless they assimilate, lest some crazy man associate a diplomat with the policies of their state. They'll say he had no motivation aside from his hatred of the Jew. Another assessment of the situation couldn't possibly be true. He lost himself in propaganda, brainwashed by Islamists who inspired him to become another raving terrorist. Governments condemn it, along with everybody else. This violence is so awful. You probably think so yourself. How much might you imagine? Elias feels the same, and he wishes, like we all do, this slaughter never came. Watching every day, watching every night, the bombs fall on farms and homes, and everywhere in sight. As the siege goes on, week after week after week, till you've seen so many dead, there are no words to speak. After years and years of protest, where nothing ever changes, except for more and more children on the Israeli firing ranges, except that the number killed might soon be in the millions. What can one person do if we're all Palestinians? They'll dismiss it as a hate crime.
Whoops, I just did that introduction with my mic muted, so I'll just try that again. It was around May 25th when a video went viral that depicted the silhouette of a young girl inside a building that was completely engulfed in flames as she desperately tried to figure out how to get out without being killed. It was, in fact, just another night of scores of Palestinian children being burned alive by the Israeli military in Gaza. Another night in Israel's war against children, and what some have called Israel's kindercide.
Did you see the girls? Did you see the girl's silhouette walking through the flame? One of dozens of children when the missiles came, who were burned alive in the classrooms where they lay, crying through the missile strikes, hoping that they may be alive in the morning. But these kids will not live to feel the hunger that had become their lot. Since the famine imposed, along with the burning skies, that incinerate their bodies in the classroom where they died. And it's another night in Gaza, the worst place to be born. If you want to have a child who might wake up in the morning. In Israel's war on children, this weekend was another one. From the time the evening came to the rising of the sun, that more kids would be slaughtered could be completely assured. The only question was, this time would they be yours? And it's another night in Gaza, the worst place to be born. If you want to have a child who might wake up in the morning. As the doctor worked, saving human lives, while she was on duty, the missile arrived to her home and to her sons and her daughters as well. Burned and buried as the four walls fell. And it's another night in Gaza, the worst place to be born. If you want to have a child who might wake up in the morning. Every night like this one, another night of kindercide. Everywhere the stench from all the corpses trapped inside. Charred body parts are scattered, charred survivors breathe their last. Surrounded by charred ruins as they wait for the next blast. And it's another night in Gaza, the worst place to be born. If you want to have a child who might wake up in the morning. And it's another night in Gaza, the worst place to be born. If you want to have a child who might wake up in the morning.
Around May 29th, I wrote The War Machine. Hearing about a campaign to boycott Boeing as the most recognizable name among the biggest so-called defense corporations in the U.S., I did a little online research into which corporations manufacture the 2-ton bunker-busting bombs that Israel has been using to destroy so many buildings and kill so many people in Gaza, Lebanon, and elsewhere. Aside from the Israeli company Elbit Systems, 5 companies came up, all American. This song is about them and the campaign to block all the ports exporting their products, which are clearly being used illegally under international law and should not be exported to Israel at all.
Boeing, Honeywell, make the war material. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, it's the way they mow the lawn. The last one to add to the mix, that's General Dynamics. Together in the Holocene, they're the war machine. I'm talking about the war machine that sends off the jets and missiles, laying waste to Palestine. For the bunker busters, if not for these fearsome 5, who knows how many children children would still be left alive? What if we blocked the ports and never let them go? What if the people all said no? I'm talking about the war machine that sends off the jets and missiles laying waste to Palestine. What if we got together and said this cannot be, that this slaughter is made possible by my country and certain enterprises they call defense corporations that provide the genocide heirs with all their ammunition? I'm talking about the war machine that sends off the jets and missiles laying waste to Palestine. Of the old. What if we started by never doing what we're told? If we're working for the export of precision-guided genocide, what if we built resistance until we turn the tide? I'm talking about the war machine that sends off the jets and missiles laying waste to Palestine. Honeywell, make the war material. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, it's the way they mow the lawn. The last one to add to the mix, that's General Dynamics. Together in the Holocene, they're the war machine.
By the very end of May, we were approaching the 3-month mark of the total embargo of Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation now was committing a huge massacre with scores killed and hundreds of casualties every morning, gunning down starving Palestinians, so desperate for a sack of flour to feed their starving families that they're prepared to risk death to get it. Yet politicians and pundits in the Western world who mentioned Gaza were still talking about peace negotiations and ceasefires and what would happen after the war was eventually over. Such myopia, willful or otherwise. It occurred to me to write a song that emphasizes the point that the Israeli plan all along has been to kill everyone in Gaza and expel any potential survivors. Now that it's been 600 days of bombing, with 2 million just about to die, now that no more hospitals are open, as missiles keep on falling from the sky, now that the famine's taken hold, now that the only place with bread is on the border with Egypt, we're just like the Zionist on TV said. This is the point in the genocide when the survivors become refugees again. They've softened up the population by bombing thousands and thousands of kids. Now that they've established the fact that they're proud of all the killing they did, now that mere survival might mean that expulsion is the cost. If you want to eat instead of starve, now that the landscape is lost, this is the point in the genocide when the survivors become refugees again.
it's becoming clearer. This is where they were heading all along. Now that all of those who said they're not like the Nazis have been proven wrong. Now that even the West is realizing they really mean to kick out everyone. Maybe now someone will do something before everyone in Gaza is gone. Because this is the point in the genocide when the survivors become refugees again. It's been 600 days of bombing.
I had no idea it was possible to write so many songs about massacring starving children. But the massacres kept happening and keep happening every morning with precision. They collect thousands of starving people together, give them 20 minutes to fight over sacks of flour, and then begin the massacre of anyone who hasn't run away by then, with or without flour. Along the lines of the song I had just written, Survivors, with this song, Gunning Down Little Girls and Boys, I was trying to be as explicit as possible about what is actually happening, without hiding behind any metaphors or allegories, but without the need for adjectives, in the tradition of Primo Levi, perhaps.
I'm watching every morning as they wait in line, instead of dying of starvation, forced to risk their lives for a bag of flour, what remains of the Palestinian nation. Did they pass a resolution in the parliament somewhere? Did they castigate the killers for their crimes? Did they say that sometime soon they might do something too late, just like every other time? Sorry, I can't hear you above the noise of the Israelis gunning down little girls and boys. I'm just listening to the wailing of a million children dying. I'm hearing on NPR and BBC Israeli fascist politicians lying. Meanwhile, someone said something about somewhere. Was it Boulder or Ukraine? Was there something about the Taoiseach or the Prime Minister of Spain? Sorry, I can't hear you above the noise of the Israelis gunning down little girls and boys. Hearing protesters who say, bring them home, as they're wrapped in blue and white. What differentiates them, I don't know, from the Holocaust deniers of the right. Perhaps an argument could be made in a time of peace, but this is total war. If you're talking about anything else, then what the hell do you stand for? Sorry, I can't hear you above the noise of the Israelis gunning down little girls and boys. I'm watching every morning as they wait in line, instead of dying of starvation, forced to risk their lives for a bag of flour, what remains of the Palestinian nation.
Meanwhile, in the United States, the Qom Detention Center was once again in the news. I remember first hearing about Qom back in the 1980s. Now, once again, Immigrants and refugees were being horribly abused in that horrible prison complex, so badly that some have died. Scores of Cuban prisoners undertook to spell out the letters SOS in the yard at a time when news helicopters were flying overhead who filmed them on June 5th. I'm sure all of them are being held in solitary confinement as punishment for this action now. Mostly they left home for mostly the same reason. Life was getting harder with every passing season. Some say it's corruption, others the embargo. How is one hungry family to know? But everybody said there was another option north. So people made their way to Mexico and then ventured forth, crossed the border and found work somewhere in the USA, hoping they might bring their families here someday. But now they're in detention, so far away from home, sending an SOS from Chrome. Place that has a history of prisoner abuse. Now all the sadists have been let loose. Give them a cup of moldy rice to live on every day, and see how many die when you treat them this way. With hardly any toilets, packed like sardines in a can, robbed of any dignity according to plan. To let the word get out, torture awaits if you dare to seek asylum in the United States. Now they're in detention, so far away from home, sending an SOS from Chrome. Several men have died there only since the fall. Indefinite detention within these four walls. Who here might get sent off to El Salvador, overwhelmingly only for the crime of being poor. The message unmistakable, which I'm helping the fascists convey. If you dare to cross that border, then you may be held for years at Chrome, asking why you ever dared to think that you should try. 'Cause now you're in detention, so far away from home, sending an SOS from Chrome. Mostly they left home for mostly the same reason. When I lived in Texas, two of the more popular bumper stickers I'd see around were, "We didn't cross the border crossed us," and "Who are you calling an immigrant, pilgrim?" With the ICE raids taking place all over the country and the protests in Los Angeles, I wrote "The Pilgrims Were Immigrants Too" on June 14th while the tear gas was flowing. Mexico banned slavery in 1829. For their neighbor to the north, this meant they'd cross the line. The USA invaded, which they somehow justified. Ever since then, Los Angeles has been occupied. Did you cross the border, or did the border cross you? The Pilgrims were immigrants too. So long that border was no big thing. Fast forward to the present and the border is king. Sacrosanct like a religion. Who do we deport? Who do we let in? Who is one of us? Who is one of them? Who do we call an alien? Who gets kicked out? Who stays here? How the ship of state is steered.
Did you cross the border or did the border cross you? The Pilgrims were immigrants too. In California, the landlords say, we love the migrants as long as they pay what we charge them and don't talk back and don't complain about what they lack. Don't organize, be afraid of the next ice raid. Don't block the roads with burning tires or set their cars on fire. Did you cross the border or did the border cross you? The Pilgrims were immigrants too. Flag held high, standing tall, done with cops and border walls. Provoke a riot, you could get more than you thought you would. Did you cross the border or did the border cross you? The Pilgrims were immigrants too. Did you cross the border or did the border cross you? The Pilgrims were immigrants too.
Since Israel, the only country in the Middle East with nuclear weapons, attacked Iran, I've been listening to the pundits in the mainstream American and British press talking about dropping 39-ton bombs on Iranian stocks of uranium as if they were discussing the weather. They talk with politicians who themselves are directly responsible for an ongoing and incredibly sadistic genocide, and act as if they might have a reasonable opinion on the matter of whether dropping thousands of bombs on Iran might somehow make the world a more peaceful place. Shall we bomb the cradle of civilization again, and this time end up with a stable, peaceful region, unlike the last time? I don't think it works that way.
Bomb Hiroshima, kill 100,000 kids. You can make up stories about how that's not what you did. You can bomb dams in Korea. You can party as they drown. You can bomb Cambodia, burn the forests and the towns. You can bomb Panama City. You can bomb Sudan. You can bomb Damascus. You can bomb Afghanistan. You can bomb Benghazi, pretend you've come to liberate. You can bomb Belgrade. You can bomb Islamic State. Maybe we'll learn. Once all the bombing ceased, you can't bomb your way to peace. Bomb refineries. You can bomb the ports. You can bomb the hospitals. You can bomb the courts. You can bomb the schools. You can bomb the tents. You can call it retribution. You can call it common sense. Maybe we'll learn. Once all the bombing ceased, you can't bomb your way to peace. You can bomb Fallujah. You can bomb Mosul. You can try to run the planet. You can make up all the rules. You can bomb the ancient cities of Yemen and Iran. You can bomb the world until the world is gone. Maybe we'll learn. Once all the bombing ceased, you can't bomb your way to peace. You can bomb Hiroshima.
I don't want to say that I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast, because that's probably not the right word. I hope, though, that you feel like you've spent some time hanging out with a kindred spirit who is experiencing the same horror at what's going on in our world that you are experiencing. To hear the other 100 or so songs I've written about the genocide in Gaza since October 2023, one place you can go is davidrovics.com/Palestine. Drop me a line anytime. I'm easy to find. Upcoming tour plans involve July in Australia, October in the northeastern U.S., a January visit to California, and May 2026 in Denmark and the U.K. I'd always especially love to hear from people who might be inclined to organize a gig in any of those places or elsewhere. To support the work I do, please consider becoming a paid supporter at davidrovics.com/subscribe or by looking me up on Substack or on Patreon. Paid supporters or members of my community-supported art program, CSA, also get certain exclusive perks like access to my new 11-hour-long audio memoir, My Life as a Protest Singer. Hope to see you on the road and in the streets. Thanks for listening.